Hey everyone. Before we get started, just a quick announcement. We're doing our first live show at the Urban Birding Festival in Chicago this September. It's our first live show and we're super excited and just a little bit nervous. Since we always appreciate our fans, we're going to be doing a Q&A and mailbag format there. So if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer live during our recording, please send them to podcast.birdsofafeather@gmail.com and hopefully we can answer your question. This week our episode is on the noisy myna, a bird that John saw on his recent trip to Australia. This bird is just completely fascinating, seriously unlike any other bird, and you'll hear us explain why. There's a YouTube video you can watch called When Good Birds Go Bad about the noisy myna that sums a lot of their crazy behaviors up. We talk about it on the episode. John had a lot of experience seeing them in Australia too and has some crazy stories. We also answer a mailbag question on noise pollution at the end of the episode as well. Get ready for a wild one this week with your hosts John Bates and Shannon Hackett, the experts, and myself, RJ, and my wife, Amanda, the new birders. Okay, let's go grab our binoculars and let's get into it. All right, so noisy myna for this episode.
Yes. Yeah, what a bird. So, I said this before with the trip to Australia is I got to see lots of things I'd never seen before. I'd never seen a member of the honeyeater, the family, the Mellophagids. And noisy myna is a member of the Mellophagidae, but it's not your typical member when it comes right down to it, even though a lot of things it does are, these are birds that are throughout Southeast Asia that are known to go to flowers, and so they're a pollinator, but they're also eating insects, and they have a variety of bill shapes. And noisy mynas they're shaped a little like starlings. As a matter of fact, one of the things that confuses people is they're really like mynas, which are part of the same family as starlings, but they're these big chunky birds and they go around in groups. And the crazy thing is they have absolutely thrived in human altered habitats. Mm-hmm. So in other words, when you cut down eucalyptus, which used to be continuous across eastern Australia, make a bunch of pastures, they're not in the pastures, but if you leave a little bit of eucalyptus, they're in the eucalyptus on the edge of the pastures. Yeah. And so they've become a very, very common bird. It'd be interesting. I was trying to figure out, we can talk a little bit about this, how common they were historically, because I've wondered whether, it's just hard to tell whether they've gotten more common, but they've certainly done some interesting things with respect to their behavior.
Well, if you look at them, they look really pretty, right? They have this gray scalloped appearance and this black mask around their face and this incredibly bright yellow patch of skin behind their eyes. But that belies the absolute heart of evil that they seem to possess. When John said he saw these things, I asked him what he saw and he said this. And so I looked them up and I'm like, holy crap, these are the absolute most brutal gangster birds in the history of birds. And in fact, they are so noticeable that our son, who just moved to Australia to play hockey for the summer, that's the first bird he's ever emailed about. Not just say, look at this is cool. Like, look, this damn thing just ate my sandwich off of my lap when I'm sitting ate my breakfast while I'm sitting outside on the balcony of the apartment I'm staying in. What the heck is the matter with this thing? Because it is absolutely fearless. It does not, it just DGA fee. It just does not give a crap at all about things. In fact, it's driven birds out of parks, like other songbirds driven, and not in like normal ways, like in brutal, violent ways.
There's a YouTube video entitled "When Good Birds Go Bad."
We watched that yesterday. That is amazing. John, tell us about that.
Well, Shannon was the one who found it, and it's basically a researcher in Melbourne going out with a nature video person, and he's got a dead pardalote, which is a little bird that's native to Australia and common in most habitats across eastern Australia. And he's got one that came in that's frozen, and he says, let's put it in the tree. And then what we'll do is we'll play the song of this pardalote, and you will see what noisy miners do. And as you guys know, I mean, they come in and they literally tear this thing apart.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
In groups.
In groups.
Yeah.
And it's like they stayed kind of like further away at the start and then like got closer and closer, and there was like more of them, and then eventually they were all like on top of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
stabbing it.
And they tore the whole thing apart, like limb by limb, with feathers flying and everything.
So what I can't fully get my mind around is how, as Europeans settled Australia, and actually it'd be interesting to know more about the Aboriginal experience with these birds. Have they always been like this? Because, for instance, every town in Australia of any size has a beautiful botanic garden, which is obviously seems great for birds, but it's also kind of perfect habitat for noisy miners because there's grass and then there's trees, and then so it's broken up, and that's apparently the habitat that they do best in. And so we went into this spectacular botanic garden in Sydney, which is very large, and we're walking along and noisy miners are just coming right up to you the entire time. I mean,
my gosh.
They just rule that part. And we saw almost no small birds. And as a matter of fact, I have this recollection of seeing one small bird that I couldn't identify that was probably 50, 60 feet off the ground that was flying, and a noisy miner was literally chasing it.
Oh.
Like, and so you start looking into the literature, and this is what they do. They're just they live in these family groups. They're incredibly territorial, and it doesn't seem like they're all that territorial against each other.
They can be. I mean,
Okay.
There's all these, I found the research on this hilarious because there's all these kind of cute names associated with these groups, these loosely affiliated groups that vary in size. Like they're called a coterie, like, okay, well, that sounds sweet. And then there are coalitions that form. And then they just are frenzied and going after, making bigger coalitions that will just destroy whatever's in its path. So the kind of cute association names just belie what the birds are actually doing. And they mate in these giant frenzies too. It's like orgies. So not only are they mass killing things, tearing things apart, they're mating in these vast orgies together. And there are birds that are called soldier birds, and in terms of what they do, like going around, like looking for things to go after. It's amazing.
This is the
awful.
Thing. Like, you guys have been out birding here, and you've seen situations where, for instance, blue jays start mobbing birds of prey and things, and so that's commonplace in the bird world. But the idea of going after things that are smaller than you. Like blue jays are known to be nest predators. They'll come in and steal young nests. They're kind of opportunistic. If they find a nest, they'll do that. But they're not going to chase adults. And yet these noisy miners, I actually found a 2023 article that came out where, again, in Eastern Australia, they've gotten really concerned about the fact that small bird populations have dropped tremendously in areas where there are a lot of noisy miners. And this study, incredibly, for our viewers may be horrified by this, they wanted to try to document that if you removed noisy miners, the populations would go up. And so they went out and they shot 4,000 noisy miners across a bunch of different sites.
Wow.
Which shows you how easy it is to do. And then monitored the return to abundance of these smaller birds. And it's definitely, the study shows that these smaller birds will come back into areas if you reduce the populations of noisy miners.
Basically, the only things they can share the habitat with are birds that get as big as kookaburras or butcher birds. So anything smaller than that is going to be driven out of the environment by noisy miners. Sorry, Amanda, go ahead.
That's crazy, Shannon. I was just going to ask, I remember a couple episodes, John talked about how, I think we talked about how progressive Australia is with policy. Do you think that's going to eventually inform policy? As far as
it already is, absolutely.
So I think it's really hard for them to come around with a native bird like this. I mean, I can't come up with many examples. As a matter of fact, this paper used a term that I'd never seen before, which is they called it a reverse keystone species, and keystone species are this is an ecological term where you've got some species that's super important for maintaining the communities it's used across all types of organisms. And I've never seen the term reverse because the implication is literally that it's reducing the diversity on purpose. and for the life of me, I can't understand what's in it for the noisy miners.
I think the gregariousness is just. I think the gregariousness is just ratcheted up because they can make larger groups because of the way humans have altered the environment. They probably didn't have all these shrub-less places with eucalyptus, whose flowers they like the most. And apparently, they display. You should look at videos of this. They display in these massive groups too, and that's called a corroboree. So they are displaying. That's an Aboriginal term that is used for Aboriginal displays like this that has been kind of applied to how you describe what on earth these birds are doing. And apparently, I mean, I've never heard of this too, that they can use the feathers around their eyes to either expose or not expose the yellow. And if you are not a dominant male or I guess the sexes are the same, feathers close off the yellow. So you signify your position by having the yellow exposed or by closing the yellow off. And if you want to display with these kind of males that have the yellow, you've got to close your yellow off to be, otherwise it's aggressive. They'll be aggressive towards you too as an individual. You got to know your place, in other words, in this Gestapo gangster group of birds.
And we grew up in this era where people were looking at starlings and talking about how starlings were crowding out native birds in various situations. They were out competing them for nest holes in the Southwest and things. And what I'd say is starlings are like passive compared to these noisy. and I think it kind of snuck up on people in Australia. I was looking at it and I found our library has a lot of great old literature, and I found a 1907 book on useful birds of Australia. And it was basically species accounts of everything. And I was trying to find noisy miner and I couldn't find it. And then finally I found this, it was in there, and it was basically this little 2-sentence thing that said, yeah, noisy miner, people don't really like them very much. But they're entirely native. And so I think that's where, but I do think actually, coming back to your point, they are going to be willing to cull them in certain areas, I think.
Interesting.
They have incredible, and I found the descriptions of their vocalizations hilarious too, because they have a lot of different kinds of vocalizations, but one of them is called a soft chuckling, which is what it's doing when it's being mean like that. And you can just like this evil soft chuckling that these birds are doing kind of under their... as they're going after things. It's just like they're
while
just
it's being mean.
Exactly.
It's like a Joker or something.
Yeah, they're a menace. It's incredible.
I do think it's interesting that their scientific name is kind of is describing the plumage of the bird, except that there's an old name that uses the term garrula, which is, I think, implying that they're boisterous and so again, people have known about them for forever, and yet at the same time, I do think that it's a crazy situation where what's happened with respect to the habitat in Australia has just offered opportunities for them to become more belligerent than they ever were historically.
That's crazy. Do they do
Yeah.
anything good?
I brought up that 1907 thing because I thought it was hilarious that even back then people were kind of going, yeah, what? I mean, I assume I saw them visiting flowers in the botanic gardens and things. I mean, they
Okay.
probably do some pollination. They eat bugs, so they're going to take away some of the bad insects probably. But so we were there because Louise is studying these introduced European goldfinches. And before the trip, we were asking around to people, where do we need to go to find them? And we were put in touch with a guy who's done a lot of banding in the Sydney area for years. And he wrote back and said, well, I don't see them anymore. And it wasn't until we started realizing what noisy miners do that my guess is they're extirpated from areas where there's high densities of noisy miners and are only in outlying areas. And we never actually saw a European goldfinch in the time that we spent in Eastern Australia going from Sydney down to Melbourne.
Oh my gosh. Crazy.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
I think the noisy miners have social media, and it's taught them to hate everybody outside of their little bubble.
There you go.
I've seen this before in other places.
It's true.
There's a lot more research to be done. And I was also looking at some of these people, some of these researchers who, like, there's incredible work on cooperative breeders in Australia, like fairy wrens are a classic example. And I was looking at some of the sort of popular books describing cooperative breeding. And one of the Australian experts on this was banding noisy miners, and he didn't realize that they were actually cooperative breeders. And I think that's in part because he just was kind of ignoring them because they're common.
They're intensely promiscuous, though, males and females, apparently. So, and it's not clear that their little groups are always related individuals, because the groups can form and deform outside of the smallest, like 8 to 10 groups. I think those are consistent, but anything after that can form and not form depending on the purposes, apparently. But they breed every month of the year. So that is extraordinarily unusual. Like super, super, super unusual. And I saw a quote about what early naturalists described it as always at war with others of the feathered kind. So it's not like they've
good.
So it's not like they've adopted this behavior recently. 100 and 200 years ago, this is how they're being described.
Crazy.
And again, I was trying to think of another bird that I've come across that I would say is along those lines. And the closest thing I've been able to come up with is there are these caracaras in the Falklands that they're called, they call them Johnny Rooks. And that's what the locals call them. And they've been accused of killing lambs and things like that. So they've been harassed pretty extensively in the Falklands and mostly are on the offshore islands now. But they're incredibly curious but they're birds of prey. And so the thing about this to me is like, this is a honey eater. This is not.
Right. It's a wannabe raptor. It's a wannabe raptor that has turned it's like, okay, well, I'm still going to feed on plants. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm a honey eater after all, but oh my, look, I am going to dominate my landscape.
Yeah.
I was reading just about their like vocalizations too. And Shannon, you touched a little bit on it, but it sounds like they have all kinds of different like ways to communicate, like different calls for different predators. Like if there's something up overhead, like a hawk, they have a certain call to alert everyone. Or if there's like a snake or a ground predator or something, they have like a different call and that they can like communicate to everyone. I know there's other birds that do that as well, but I thought that was very interesting about them. And yeah, clearly it must help them too.
I mean, coming back to something Shannon said, I think they're probably pretty high on the intelligence scale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like comes with a major streak of belligerence.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez Louise. Are they only in Australia?
Yep. And only in Eastern Australia.
Okay.
So
I was
there's
to say, do we have to be afraid of them up here?
Well,
Oh.
so that's it. So
They were introduced, but they didn't stick a couple of
In
times
New Zealand.
in New Zealand.
Oh.
But
which is a little surprising to me. I wonder if it's a little bit too cold, and that may be the biggest thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't stick in, because the areas in New Zealand that they would have been introduced would seem to have the kind of habitat that they might love.
For New Zealand, then.
do eucalyptus dominate the landscape in New Zealand the way they do in Australia?
Well, they've certainly been introduced. They're not native, but they've been introduced
Yeah.
in a lot of the.
So maybe that's what it is, that the eucalyptus isn't quite right for them. I don't know, because it seems to me they would take advantage of that if they could.
Okay.
Good for New Zealand that they didn't stick.
Yeah. Seriously.
Well, as bad as they are, and the data are pretty clear that they're problematic, there's definitely, they're worthy of a lot more research, because
Okay. Yeah. Do Australian people like them? Like, do they call them cheeky, or is they just like, I hate those birds?
My guess is it really depends on the people.
Okay.
And certainly if you are a bird watcher wanting to see lots of small birds, and they're all driven away by the fact that there are these noisy miners there, you're going to lose your affinity for them pretty quick. And again,
I'll tell you from our son's perspective, they have street cred. Like he admires their boldness. Like to just come right up to his plate and take his sandwich off is like, that's bold, right?
Respect.
So I don't think he's ever expressed respect for a bird like that.
I don't know. It sounded to me like it was fear.
Maybe, but it wasn't disgust the way you can have for a gull that tries to come and get your sandwich.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
No, it wasn't that. It was like, oh my God, look what this bird will do.
That is hilarious. Jeez Louise.
It's funny. I feel like every website I went to when I was reading up on these used the same word, and I was waiting, and I don't think anybody's used this word yet to describe them, but I kept seeing just bully.
Oh, yeah.
They're bullies.
So I'll send you guys a picture, because I was out at this one place. It's a little nature reserve on the edge of Canberra, and Shannon was saying they there are limits to what they'll attack. And I've got a photo of one that I didn't realize what it was, but I saw a butcher bird, and suddenly something flew at this butcher bird, and so I put my camera up and took a picture. And when I went back, I realized when I looked at it, it was a noisy miner attacking a butcher bird.
Jeez, that is badass.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
It's like, you know,
and actually, one of the things I wanted to mention about Sydney is again, Sydney is a huge city with a lot of mosaic habitat. So we've been talking about, like, the Botanic Garden is perfect for them. Parks are perfect for them. But you get along the coast, and there's this coastal scrub, which is fairly dense, and that's apparently not as good for them. And so you get into that coastal scrub, and suddenly you're seeing these birds like fairy wrens and some of the other species of honey eaters, and so around the edges of these modified habitats that aren't completely taken over by these noisy miners, by these bullies.
Yeah.
It's a perfect word. There are these interstitial spaces where these birds are still making a living in these.
Good. Thank God, right?
Yep.
Jeez, man.
I mean, I guess I have a lot of respect for them taking their behavior to that far of an extreme, but then I'm not a small songbird either, when I would not be thinking
Right.
that if I were a small songbird that is being ganged up on by 20 of them and having my wings ripped out feather by feather and, being left in a pile of feathers with my head taken off.
Right.
And again, I mean, it's funny that the word bully always cracks me up, because I remember reading an old Scientific American article years ago where the last line of it was they did these behavioral tests of human bullies. And what they found was that bullies were absolutely willing to push for more pain against when they got the opportunity against other individuals. And so the last line in the paper was something along the lines of, bullies turn especially mean when someone tries to pierce their bubble of self-love.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Okay. And my
Gosh.
guess is if you went out and pestered noisy miners,
Yes.
Yeah.
you'd be sorry about that.
Yeah.
You used to have that
Exactly.
hanging in your office, that quote. Do you
I
still
did. I
have that?
don't know where it is.
Uh-huh.
I've got it somewhere.
Very cool.
Well, I think we're getting kind of close on time. Is there anything else on noisy miner? We have a mailbag question about noise.
It's everybody want to go to Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. We have a mailbag question about noise. So
Oh, cool.
how fitting. So this is from Matt B. I'm not sure where Matt's from, but he reached out on Instagram and he said, random question I thought I'd send. Is there anything that comments on how noise pollution is affecting birds? I was out on a run yesterday near a very busy road and saw a mockingbird singing its little heart out. It made me realize how hard it would be for any other bird to hear what it is trying to do. Figure I'd send the question along. Appreciate y'all's podcast. Thank you, Matt B.
Great question,
This is
Matt.
something
Yeah.
I almost thought that we should have an entire episode dedicated to, because we could easily talk for half an hour about this, because there's a lot of research actually that's been done that's really, really, really fascinating. Research using vocalizations, research looking at hormones, a lot of things. But the answer is, yeah, there are huge implications of noise pollution. And a lot of the research is either comparing urban and rural environments where noise regimes are really different, and seeing what happens to a bird that crosses both of those habitats. What do they do? And it turns out if you're in a noisy environment, you have to sing at a higher pitch. You have to sing many times louder than you would just for your voice to carry, to maybe even communicate with other members of your species, either to find a mate or to repel some kind of invader into your territory. So that has huge consequences for a bird. For a bird's stress, its longevity, its ability to mate, or its ability to even be in an environment. So a lot of birds aren't in some of these really noisy environments because they can't sing loud enough, long enough, or high enough to maintain population connectivity amongst individuals, which, when you think about it, is really amazing. And then there are these natural experiments, which I also read about, many of them done in Europe, although not all, where what happens to birds when an airport closed. So there's a German airport that closed, and they looked at what happened to bird populations before and then after. And some, they showed the classic things in that, with birds singing at a higher pitch, needing to sing longer and louder in order to communicate. And that changed when the airport closed. So for some of these birds, they went back to singing at the same pitch, the less frequent, less loud, so indicating some kind of behavioral plasticity, right? That you do this for a while, but you can go back. But some didn't. So
interesting.
So there's no universal way of looking at the effects of noise. And so what happened, I guess, is that the bird species that didn't go back to singing the way they did in a less noisy part of their environment had some kind of selection that was happening for individuals to force a more permanent noise communication regime, which is also, I think, super interesting and it seems to have long-term consequences of birds. And they've measured hormones to show that if you're singing that much, your stress levels are off the charts.
So the one thing I'll just point out, because it's always fascinated me, is you guys have seen dippers in Colorado, right? Have you guys?
I don't think we've actually seen one. No.
Oh,
Yeah, just pictures.
But here's this species, a set of species that spend their entire lives along these whitewater rivers. And so what are their adaptations to the fact that they live in an inherently noisy environment all the time? So there are interesting places in nature where some places are noisier than others. And so we should definitely talk about this.
Apparently, if you live near one of these airports, you start singing earlier in the day before the airport kind of fully goes into function. And that is something too that could be plastic. So some species in this airport in Germany went back to singing later the way the less noisy populations in less noisy environments did. So they shifted their behavior, but others did not. So again, you're selecting for things that are singing earlier, and it didn't go back. So it's not just a matter of flexibility or behavioral flexibility. There can be actual selection, which could change the gene pool and then has evolutionary consequences. There's a citizen science thing that is really cool called the Dawn Chorus Project. And where worldwide they're trying to look at the phenomenon of noise. So you can engage not just like with eBird and with the fire thing that we talked about too, but there's this Dawn Chorus Project where you can contribute data associated with trying to figure out what happens to birds in noisy environments. So I suggest people take a look at that website and see how they can contribute.
I should take a look at that just
Very
because
cool.
I've actually recorded cardinals and warbling vireos and along this place that I go called Park 538 on the Chicago River. And it's got major streets on either side. It's got the landing route for O'Hare going straight over the top of it.
Oh,
and
wow.
so it's literally one of the noisiest places I've ever birded.
Oh,
I've always wondered, like,
And
what
then
are the birds like?
in the U.S., when COVID went in, there were some natural experiments again because people didn't drive, so the noise went way down. And Liz Derryberry, who was a postdoc at LSU, is a professor now at the University of Tennessee. She and some other people studied the phenomenon of that on white-crowned sparrows, who did change their behaviors dramatically when COVID happened and the lockdowns happened. So they again changed. In noisy environments, they sing higher, longer, louder. And when the environment got a lot less noisy, they lowered their songs and didn't have to sing as hard or as long. Their songs didn't have to be as long to communicate. So this, there are these natural experiments, and noise pollution is stressful on people as well. Causes increase in stress hormones. It causes you to not be outside as much, which has other long-term consequences. And for me, loud environments are just flat out painful with my hearing loss. I mean, I can't stand really noisy outdoor environments. I feel like it's like destroying my brain to be outside in those environments. And I don't, noise pollution is a problem for people too. These flyovers, I don't know if you guys have gone to the air show in Chicago before, but that noise, I cannot. I have to put noise canceling headphones on and go inside. Even in my office during those days, it's too loud. I can't deal with it. My parents took Pete when he was 2 because we were in Africa, and he loved anything like that. All kinds of moving equipment, cars, trucks, planes, whatever. And they took him down to see the Air and Water Show in Chicago, and it was too loud for him. So my parents said they had to leave because it was too loud. And that kind of noise pollution can affect your hearing, which has long-term consequences too, with respect to how your brain functions. So, I guess people like to see those things, but even one single exposure to sound that's that loud can permanently alter your hearing, irreparably alter your hearing. So, if you're going to do things like that, you should have ear protection on. Take your noise canceling headphones, take anything to ameliorate the effects of the loud noise on your brain.
It's crazy. You guys think about adaptation and evolution and things like that a lot more than I do because you're scientists, but I always think of things happening of this like over such a long period of time. And when you're talking about like birds, being by airports, and it's like literally just within a year making these like changes, it's crazy how like fast it can happen and how things adapt. It's amazing. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable thing to think about.
Yeah. There was a study in Paris at the Eiffel Tower where they tried to lower, and that's a noisy park. It's a beautiful place, though. And they tried to lower the noise, but in that, again, natural experiment, the noise wasn't lowered enough to change the way the birds were singing. So you have to go beyond just a little bit of noise reduction if you want to make the birds behave kind of more naturally, if you don't want to just keep applying selective pressures to change the way they sing. So that study showed that it wasn't enough noise lowering to put the birds that are there into what they do in rural environments. Instead, they're singing, 3 times to 6 times louder. So maybe they went to singing 6 times louder to singing 3 times louder, but that's still a lot of energy that goes into singing that was different from how these birds originally evolved, and they did not evolve in these noisy environments. It's a really interesting question that I don't see too much conservation effort into. I mean, people, I think, inherently know that noisy environments are bad, but I don't know if there are kind of local or national efforts to change noise pollution outside of things like people don't want the plane routes to go over their houses. But
I think that just the general hope is that the plasticity will see wildlife through.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that one.
Well, yeah, when you start losing diversity, suddenly you realize, like, the noisy miners, that something's not right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think that's...
It's a great
Anything else on
question,
this
Matt.
episode? John always brings it back to the noisy miners. John's so good at closing it out.
Think about those guys.
Yeah, that was a great question.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt, for writing in. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. Next week, we'll be back with a brand new episode on the Baltimore Oriole. You'll also hear some stories about Chicago legend Jeffrey Bayer visiting John at the Field Museum. It'll be a fun one. All right, we'll see you all next week. Love you all.